and a portion of their profits to humanitarian organizations. Sergio and Cade make it their responsibility to mentor up-and-coming designers and students from FIT, the University of Texas, High School of Fashion Industries, Parsons School of Design, and Pratt Institute as a way of passing on valuable knowledge to future generations. So with that beautiful introduction, let me please introduce Sergio and Cade to the stage.
Not the coronavirus, I promise.
Excuse my computer today. I had a printing faux pas. All right. Well, let's just start off by if you could tell us a little bit more about life before Celestino.
That's going to be you.
For both of you, though. Starting with Sergio. But.
So I've known that I wanted to be a designer as a young person. It was a little bit harder when I was growing up in terms of the visibility of even seeing this as a career. I grew up in a really small town in Texas, and so I knew that I love fashion. I just didn't know at the time how this is going to correlate for the future. And then once I found out about FITM, that was the first fashion school I went to. I saw that I could go and like have this as a career choice. And so since, I don't know, a little kid, I've always loved how fashion kind of changes people's perspective. Like when you put on something fabulous, it almost is empowering to you. When you know you feel amazing because you're wearing something fabulous. And just that feeling, I wanted to translate that feeling into making a change in the world with how we tackle certain social and environmental problems.
Yeah, that's great.
Do you want to talk on how you first started the company, especially?
Well, I actually started while I was a junior at FIT. I knew that I never wanted to work for anybody. This industry can be very toxic, and so I never wanted anybody's negativity to get in the way of what I would love to do. And so that is something that you're going to run into if you work for other people. Sometimes they're amazing, sometimes they're not so happy, and that's something that I never wanted. I never wanted to put anything negative into what I love to do.
Yeah. Where does the name come from, Celestino?
That's my middle name.
Is your middle name?
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Okay.
I didn't know that until we were in a relationship for 2 years. It's like, how did you find that? And he's like, really?
It was my grandpa's name, too.
It's a great name.
Thank you.
And how about you?
Oh, I came on board about 5 years ago. Prior to that, like you were saying, I was doing modeling and acting. And I come from a town of 2,500 people, super small. We had one stoplight. And so I had always dreamed of doing something bigger, and besides going to college for 4 years and then coming back home and living and working and settling down, that sort of thing. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but for me, I was just like, I gotta get out of here and do something that's artistic and fun. And where I come from, there's not a lot of opportunity for the arts, especially creatively. And so that's when I got into the modeling and acting, and then I met Sergio, and I came on board, and I was like, okay. He had already moved back to Austin. He was in New York for 10 years, and then moved back to Austin for 5. And when I met him within those 5 years, I was like, oh my God, what are you doing here? You create these most amazing garments, and literally I showed up and I walked into his house, and there was 5 closets alongside the hallway as you walk in. And all of those closets were stuffed with hundreds and hundreds of ball gowns and beautiful creations. And I'm looking at his Instagram, and I haven't seen one of these things on there. And I was like, we need to get this stuff shot. We need to start creating these beautiful photo shoots and really push the narrative of what you do as a company, because you're doing this by yourself. And I mean, with the help of a few interns, you can't not have a successful business without marketing behind it. And so I was like, okay, let's just full-fledged. I dove in, took over, and now he creates, and I throw opinions out there, and then I take his story that he wants to tell or that we both agree upon now, and we just make something beautiful with it.
That's great. Very cool. So how did you first get yourself started? I mean, you started here at FIT, but how did you kind of make the initial, how did you make that first sale, I guess I should ask?
Well, I actually started having a few clients before I even started in 2005, and really just going through the process of creating something for specific people and learning how to fit properly, learning how to do a variety of body types. And in 2005, I was like, okay, I'm gonna make a collection. And like, I had no money, zero money. So you can actually go about doing this business. And this is before social media. I actually used some of my student loans to create my first collection.
I
bought
don't
some fabric.
recommend that. We're still paying for it.
But showing at New York Fashion Week, it was a different ball game in the past. There were so many gatekeepers that you had to get past and make these certain people happy. Now with social media, I mean that goes out the door. Y'all are empowered from day one. So really, it's a different mindset of how you go about it now. But don't let anybody ever tell you you can't do anything. If you love something, just keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it, and one day it'll hit.
Yeah. How did you get those first couple clients? Were they friends or?
I was actually
Referrals?
at a fabric store, and this lady was like, "I need somebody to help me make something," or like she was out loud talking, and I just put my nose in there,
That's
and I was like,
amazing.
"Hey, I can help you." And it wasn't a ton of money, but I knew that going through the process was going to be invaluable to me. And she was a little bit tricky in terms of when you deal with clients, learning how to maneuver personalities is another skill that you have to learn because they'll eat you up or walk all over you. But I knew at the end of the day I needed to get these hard situations under my belt so that when I did grow my business, I could handle myself in any capacity.
Yeah, that's great. And what do you feel like has been the biggest challenge, or what was the biggest challenge to getting started, I guess I should ask,
What is the
other than
biggest
money?
challenge? I mean, money's a big part of it.
Yeah. Did you ever have to raise money?
No, that's the one thing I never want a financial backer. You look at brands like Zach Posen or other brands that bring on like investment, and now they don't know their names anymore. Ralph Rucci is a super talented designer. He doesn't own his own name anymore. Like Isaac Mizrahi, like once you go down that road, you're kind of selling your soul and you're also compromising your ethics because at the bottom line, profit is what they care about. They could care less about anybody, even you. They don't care about you. So be careful about that road. It will take you a lot longer. I mean, I've been doing this almost 20 years and I'm getting to a place bigger now, but it's still, I have a long way to go. But I don't have to answer to anyone and I'm doing it in the right way, which I mean, I don't know any designers that are.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like the biggest obstacle that we're having to overcome is just educating the consumer, especially about pricing. I feel like that's something that all of y'all can do as you grow as a business as well to help in this problem is just educating them as to the amount of work and the amount of time that goes into creating one garment. It's not like we're making t-shirts here.
Right.
And not that there's anything wrong with that, but at the same time, people need to understand what they're paying for and why it costs them as much as it does, because it's not easy. I mean, to slave over a sewing table all day long, if you're making it yourself, like, that's not fun, girl. I know.
Yeah.
I do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and ordinarily I would love to flash through your website right now, but we're a little technically challenged. But what are your price ranges, just for the students?
Well, it kind of varies. So, like the ready-to-wear collection ranges anywhere between 95 up to 600, but that also offers like a personal experience as well for the person that's purchasing, so they can kind of customize their own look. Because we are a sustainable company, we only use upcycled fabrications. So all of the fabrics that we have come in limited quantities, and so we're going to have to figure out a way to basically they give us a color that they're interested in, and then we steer them in the direction of the fabrics that we have for that type of look. So that's the ready to wear, and then the couture can start anywhere from 1,000 and go up as high as you want it to. So needless to say.
Yeah, that's really cool though, the experience. I feel like that's something that, we've been hearing more and more about from everyone. It just, people will want an experience in their
Yeah.
clothing, which is really
Well, and it's also like anymore, even these massive stores are trying to figure out a way to provide a personal experience. The consumer wants to feel special. Like we're past the point of trying to be like everybody else, and now we're trying to figure out how we can separate ourselves from everybody else by having these personal experiences, by having these specific one of a kind pieces.
yeah.
So,
And so, talk a little bit about how you're set up. I know you have a showroom downtown. Um,
So our studio is actually in South Street Seaport. We have clients come in and they can tell us about how they want to feel, what they're going to be experiencing, if it's a wedding or if it's I don't know, whether it's a bride or if it's an event or a party or a red carpet. And then we just give them kind of an intimate experience, which we don't have to compete with Instagram or all of those like very quick things. This is something that is different. And if major retailers would have kept with this concept, they probably would have survived better. Also, we're 100% transparent when we're creating. You know who's making it. You know where our fabric's coming from, and that's something that our industry is very horrible about. When you buy a $2 t-shirt, it's 100% made by somebody who's being taken advantage of. The fabric's toxic, and you're destroying the planet with paying less money for something because it usually you end up throwing away because it falls apart and it ends up in a landfill. Our industry is the second most polluting industry in the world, and 40% of things in landfill are from our industry.
Yeah.
So transparency is, I think, a future of our industry, and it's a necessity of our industry, so that people can make a conscious effort on where to put their money and know that it's not contributing to problems around the world.
our system too is like it's fully different from anybody else. So right now, y'all know of Celestino because if you didn't already know of us, it's because you're coming to this class and you were told about it, right? So we're competing with like Givenchy, Chanel, Dior, those sorts of things. So we have to offer an experience that's fully different from going to one of those types of stores. So it's a live workspace. It's like you're invited into our home. You get to see where everything's created. You see how it's created. You get to see all of the textiles up close in person. And you also understand that he's the one making it and or I'm cutting it normally. But we're fully different from any company right now in the sense of being upcycled everything. What else?
Well, usually designers don't make their stuff or
Yeah,
even know how
that
to
too.
sew.
yeah.
Not to be
Pretty
shady,
cool,
but to be
yeah.
shady. It's true. We really, everything that you see, we create and we've touched. And then on top of that, we're offering the thing where even if you have like a lower budget, but you need something to have for like, for instance, like a wedding or something, we will try to give you exactly what you're looking for, whether that's through the textile choice that has to be changed and manipulated around, and or maybe we use less yardage of something. We still offer an experience for the person that is worthy of having that moment, you know? So,
What's your lead time usually on a garment?
We can do stuff actually pretty quickly,
Yeah.
2 weeks to about 3 months if it's something like a wedding dress that does take a little bit time to finalize the details. But
I
we
mean,
turn things around pretty quickly.
yeah.
Yeah.
The most recent collection that's out right now on the website was made within 2 weeks. So, and that was I think like 11 or 12 look collection.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can whip things out if we have to.
Yeah.
Just depends on the circumstances.
Yeah. So I asked you about what the biggest challenge was. What's been the most rewarding part of doing your own business?
I think the most rewarding part is not only inspiring people that they can take whatever they love to do and make a change with it. That's really what we want people to get from what we're doing. I don't want to be a huge company. Like our end goal was to have like 3 little stores and then call it a day. We feel like that's a future of all industries. These giant corporations that are kind of gobbling up everything, they're the dinosaurs. They're going to die off. And eventually it's going to be all of you in the room that have room to build something up It's not going to be Kate
skills.
Spade or The Gap, but it can be something that you can live off of and be happy doing. And I feel like if more people did what they loved, we would have a happier world. And we can solve all of these things with what we do.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. What do you feel like is your style philosophy?
So I love history and politics. Those are like, Kate's kind of like the pop culture person. Like, I don't know any pop culture references, but if you tell me something that happened in 1800s, like that's really more of where my mind goes, and whatever's happening in our world today in terms of the political climate. Um, that's literally all I listen to while I'm sewing, and I'm always sewing.
Yeah, inspiring.
Yeah. I mean, he'll take those, and then I'm like, okay, how can I twist this to make it more modern to today's time, to have it on the red carpets, or to have somebody interested in buying it and feeling like they could wear it out into the public eye, you know? So
Yeah.
it's a nice balance.
Yeah.
He'll come up with an idea and a silhouette, and then we pick together the fabric, and then from there it's like, okay, well, what if we did this or made this part sheer to give it a little bit more edge, those sorts of things.
That's great. Now, actually, I feel like I've like kind of jumped over the elephant in the room, and that Sergio is on this season of Project Runway, which the series or season finale is this Thursday, and Sergio is in the final four, which is super exciting going into the last episode. How many people in the room have watched at least one episode?
Awesome.
Like 2/3 of the room. So you have some understanding of Sergio's qualities and.
Don't believe what you
styling.
see on TV, though. I will say that right now.
But I think that the message that you just described, I feel like comes across very well in the show, and what I've seen every episode, so what I've seen of the episode.
And honestly, I went on the show to try to use the platform for good, to bring up social and environmental topics each episode. So I went on there with a little different mindset. I didn't go on there to
Create drama.
well, not only that, not to create drama, but to use this as a vehicle, because we are a very small brand, and that has a big platform. So I knew that with making dresses, this is a way that I could talk about issues, and we have inspired people in different places of this specific thing. It does make people uncomfortable because a lot of people don't like talking about hardships in what's going on in the world, but if you don't talk about it, you're never going to solve any of these issues, and they are difficult. That's why we need to be talking about them.
And if you think about it, fashion has always been political. I mean, throughout the history of time, you have like Alexander McQueen was always political with a lot of his stuff. You also have like even the idea of women wearing pants. That's a form of politics in a sense. And I mean, that's been the whole goal of the company, is to bring these things that are happening to different minorities and that are suppressing people, and figure out, not only like talk about them, but also offer a solution. A lot of the times people don't have a solution to these things, and oftentimes when we're talking about whatever we're talking about, we're giving a solution as well at the end of everything.
Yeah, it's great. I think you come across in the show as someone who's really ready to help all the other contestants too, which is very admirable,
Hopefully
and I
they
don't think something that everyone does.
I wish they would show that a little bit more, but they didn't.
That's great. So, talk to us a little bit about your process for design work. So you have a client that comes in, and for whatever event, and how do you work with them, and then go on your own?
So I always like to ask the client how they want to feel. There's people that love attention, that want to be the best dressed person in the room. There's people that just want to blend in and just be subtle in the way that they are in a room. And so I always ask people, how do you want to feel in that room? Some people are like, I want to be in between. I want to look fabulous, but I don't really want be the number one person in the room. And I really like to cater whatever I'm doing to make the person feel as comfortable, because you can go really crazy or you can go very classic when it comes to design. And making the customer happy or the client happy at the end of the day, that's how they're going to come back to you, and that's how you can build a business. So you really have to tune in and understand that, yes, you are creating something that's a part of you as your design aesthetic, but you have to fit that in on who is wearing it, because you never want the dress to wear the person, you want the person to wear the dress.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think too, we really pay attention to the details of the person itself, whether it's their skin color or their eye color, how long their hair is, those sorts of things, taking those into consideration. Also, just like the things of, do they like to wear jewelry? Do they like to wear a 6-inch heel or a 1-inch heel? You know, those sorts of things, or flats even. Taking all of those into consideration can also only enhance the design that they're wearing that day, wherever it is too. And then also, I feel like with our aesthetic, we always try to offer some form of a waistline in everything that we design, just because we do like to have that like cinched in type of look, not necessarily corseted, but just, you know, offering something that accentuates their figure best, I guess you could say.
Yeah. I think that looks good on most people. So
Yeah.
it's good. Tell us a little bit about your time here at FIT. You know, what kind of internships you may have done, or clubs or activities.
So, I mean, I had originally FIT had been my number one choice when I got out of high school, but September 11th happened, and my parents were like, "You're not going to New York." So I went to LA first, and I knew that I always wanted to go to FIT just because I feel like this is the best fashion school in the world. And the programs that they offer are like, I don't know, people from other schools come to our school because of the technical aspects of it. So like the couture program, the leather program, like all I did was try to learn as much as I could, because not only are you paying money for it, but you're taking all of these things into how you're going to make money in the future. So literally try to learn as much as you can while you're here, because this is actually the easy part of life. I know, like, y'all probably don't sleep, but you're going to sleep less when you go out in the real world.
Good luck.
If you have kids, especially.
Yeah.
So it's not going to get any easier, but if you can take everything that you've learned, you can make yourself very efficient. And efficiency is how to capitalize on the future of what you do.
Talk about the Met too.
As soon as I graduated, I had the opportunity to work at the Metropolitan Opera, which, if you can have that opportunity, I would highly recommend it. The way that they build costumes is completely different even to what you're learning here. And they take like old world techniques on how they make stuff. Their costumes sometimes have to last 70 years, 100 years. Like they had costumes from the 20s that they would put on stage.
Wow.
And they would still function.
That's
And
amazing.
so they would make stuff super strong, super lasting. And you also, because the opera singers are a variety of sizes, I got to learn how to fit all different types of bodies, which mainly you focus on here is like the models, which is beautiful and amazing, but the real world, that's not the reality of our industry. And so it did give me an insight on how to fit, which is crucial to what we do. And fitting actually changes your brain around in terms of how you design as well, because you know how to adjust things depending on proportion, and that's invaluable.
Yeah. I don't know if you're aware, but right now at the FIT Museum, there is a ballerina exhibit, which is
Yeah, we went and saw it. It's
similar.
amazing.
Oh, yeah, you're excited.
And the
yeah.
same people that work at the Met work at the ballet too,
Ah.
because their seasons flip-flop.
Oh, okay. That's really neat.
Yeah.
And it's one company, really, that kind of goes back and forth?
It's
or-
a lot of the same people. It's
Okay.
called Local 67, I think, is the union that does all the costumes.
Got it.
And they're here in New York City, and they do pay you like a great wage. You do work very hard, but they give you insurance and retirement, and so you could actually make a career if you love that world.
Yeah, that's great. It seems, from watching the show, it seems like you picked up a lot of technical skills, both at maybe at school or there. Or where do you feel like actually you honed your skills best?
I think I took different aspects of everywhere. FITM actually had a great like mass market patterning foundation. This gave me more of like evening wear and more couture, and then the Met gave me like the fitting and then the final details. So I feel like every piece of it kind of gave me a different component, and I feel like if you want to run your own business, you need to know all of these different things unless you're very wealthy and you're going to pay somebody else. But you still need to know them because you have to tell people what you want at the end of the day. And if you don't know how to articulate that, you're going to get a very generic design.
Yeah.
Who in this room wants to like own their own business one day? Okay, awesome.
Wow. That's
So,
probably more than 2/3.
yeah. So be ready, first off. Second, honestly, for us too, is when it comes to design, you need to understand also how to draw inspiration and draw inspiration that connects back to you. I feel like that's super crucial for a lot of designers. And when we get a lot of our interns that come in, that's one of the things that some of them struggle with, depending on what school they're going to. Because each school offers a really amazing like technical form of some kind, and sometimes you don't have students who understand the inspiration or why that's so important or how they can draw inspiration from themselves. And one thing we always encourage is like it's great to be inspired by a painting, but figure out how and why you resonate with that painting. What does that bring out of you that makes you like inspired to make this whole collection based upon this one painting? A lot of the times when we're doing our inspirations, we're like, how does this affecting us, or how's this affecting somebody that is dear to our hearts? And really trying to tie back everything to ourselves so that it's easier for us to talk about it as well, and it's easier to make that sell because people love a story that's has something to do with the connection of the designer, that has something to do with like helping the world at the same time and like finding a solution as well. Highly recommend that.
That's great. Actually, question for you. Did you do anything to further your education when you kind of took on this different role?
Financially, no. I couldn't afford it. But
Yeah.
whenever I did meet Sergio, that's one thing I'm very fortunate is I did not have to pay for a lot of schooling, and not to make it sound like he's a big-headed person, but he honestly does have a lot of knowledge in this industry, in everything that he does and constructs. Basically, if I actually practiced sewing, I could probably sew now just as well as he could, but I just don't do it because I do everything else. So I know how to cut grain line. I know how to pick out fabric. I know colors. I knew coloring before, like how to organize something in color. And I also come from a landscaping background as well. So I was doing landscaping for 7 years. So understanding like how to do a design and figuring out how to make it balanced to the eye and those sorts of things. And just there's a lot of different things that I took. I learned through going through the motions and also practicing every day different types of things. So when I was modeling and acting, I took in the idea of like understanding also other people's bodies and what looked good on different models because different models had different torso lengths and different leg lengths. And then when it came to project management, which is basically also something I do now when we have interns and stuff, when he was gone to Project Runway, people didn't even know that he was gone because I ran the Instagram, I developed a ready-to-wear collection, I did client visits and made client ball gowns and celebrity ball gowns and all of these different things. All of this stuff he either taught me or I've like learned how to deal with. I broke out in the hives, but
But you made it
I learned how to do with all of this
Yeah.
just throughout life. And basically, when he was saying that you never stop learning, that's a legitimate thing, especially for those who want to own their own business one day. Because honestly, like even I mean, in the most recent episode, you saw that we grew our own kombucha. We just learned about that literally 5 months ago on how to grow our own kombucha. And that way we're not polluting the earth anymore and using something that's biodegradable and natural and those sorts of things. So you can always find a place to learn something and take it in. And internships are the easiest way because yes, you go and work for free for somebody, but if they're good and that you love their style and what they're doing, you can learn so much just by that even. And with us having like a live work studio space, it's a very open concept. So everyone that interns with us is actually being immersed not only in the fashion side, but the business side with we do our own website, we do our own Instagram, we do our own photo shoots, we do our own styling. Like everything that you see, it's me and him. So that's how we've gotten this far, is literally just soaking it up and applying hard work ethic.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. So, did you always know you wanted to do women's wear, or did you ever try out anything else along the way?
I mean,
than
I
that
my passion lies behind women's wear. I think women's fashion really doesn't have any boundaries, and so you can really express yourself in all capacities. Men's fashion is starting to transition into that place, but it hadn't been there until the last few years, and now that's why we're doing men's, because it's a lot funner. It is a funner time in fashion, but it's also a boring time in fashion because everybody is so preoccupied with the almighty dollar that, like, I don't know, fashion to me right now is not that inspiring.
I mean, it wasn't up until maybe this last year that we really, I mean, let's be honest, not to blow smoke up him either, but Billy Porter has changed the red carpet recently within the past couple of years just by coming out in these big ball gowns and having these dramatic moments. I feel like for anybody that's a creative, that's what we all aspired for, and like that inspired us was seeing these moments with celebrities and in the movies and those sorts of things. Having these big ball gowns and things like that push people to see a different type of style and push people to step outside their boxes, and or also help them become who they are as themselves with these, with the new gender, like gender not having us being on a spectrum, and or sexuality as well. There's a bunch of different things that have changed just within the past 2 or 3 years, that now even as a company, like we started our own menswear because I was in the modeling industry, and having to be a male model who had to like basically be this big around was not, it's difficult. And to find clothing even in mass market like H&M and Forever 21 and all those types of things, everything was cut for somebody that was made this size. And I mean, I have calves, I have thighs. I mean, she ate plenty of biscuits back in her day. So I'm like, for us that was another thing, is like figuring out also how to design for men who had muscles and who had larger legs than normal. Yeah, exactly, exactly. And so, for us, I feel like that's been always something that we have been taking into consideration, especially for the past 5 years, is to really just have no boundaries towards anything that we create fashion-wise.
And have fun while doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great. So talk to us a little bit about Project Runway. I know you were just telling me a little bit before we started about leaving home for 2.5 months, and take us through the whole start to finish. How did you apply? How'd you get in? Beyond that.
So they, with social media, that's why social media is so important, I think, because they actually found me and my company, and they were like, "Hey," I thought it was actually a joke when
Yeah,
they reached
like,
out.
they're like,
Like, this is
you should
spam.
think about
No
applying.
phishing.
Yeah, we honestly thought it was a scam because honestly we've gotten so many things in our emails that are not legit, and so they're like, you should think about applying, and I'm like, well, it's definitely directed towards you because I can't sew. So, yeah, we made the video and we presented ourselves as a couple just to like let them know that this has been a business that takes two people to run.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, they emailed back, and then you can kind of take it from there.
Yeah, it's an interesting process. It is a TV show, so you don't really have any say on what it is that they put out there about you, so be very wary of that. Only maybe the judges get to say on how they're portrayed. So when I see the episode, I'm seeing it for the first time, even though I lived through it. And it's just an experience that if you are interested in it, make sure that you know your craft backwards and forwards, because you're going to get thrown into a very stressful environment. You only get to sleep 4 hours a night, so I don't know, y'all are probably used to that, but it's an experience where you are challenged mentally, physically, emotionally, in every capacity, and it's not for the faint of heart.
So it's hard to understand watching them, but basically a challenge ends and a challenge begins, right? 'Cause sometimes you guys are wearing the same clothes, or
Yeah.
is there sometimes a gap, or?
It depends on, but you're just like making stuff over very quickly, over and over
Wow.
and over and over again.
Yeah.
I mean, and the filming process was about 2.5 months. And with that, you know, one of the things I will say that is been a blessing from Project Runway is it alleviated a lot of different reality stresses for him as a creative. I feel like in today's world, we all struggle so much. Like, let's be honest, it's a hard life right now with bills and finances and trying to survive. That as a creative person, you oftentimes get suppressed and your creativity gets suppressed. Him going on this show reopened a whole different form of creativity that I hadn't even seen from him. I was like looking at these designs on Project Runway, and I'm like, girl, where has this been? Like,
Yeah.
let's
Cool.
apply some of this to what we're doing now, because I'm like looking at these episodes. I never even would have guessed that you designed this.
Yeah.
You know,
Very cool.
and before he left, it was one of those things where we were just going through the motions almost with creating. We would make these really big. We would have one dramatic big ball gown that like grabbed the eye, and then you could tell that was like his creativity kicking in and his love and his heart and his passion. And then it was like 7 other looks that were like, you know, they're okay. And I was like, when he got back, it was like, oh, okay. And then now what y'all are gonna see on Thursday is like unlike anything I've seen. It's probably the best collection he's ever created.
So cool.
So
Exciting.
I will say that with that, it gave him a whole new vamp on creative outlook and like how to design that. Not only that looked good for somebody to carry and wear outside of just the show, but
Yeah.
also something that was a piece of him and that told a story that you could see it creatively, you could feel it, you like just watching it walk and move, you can appreciate it, and that it was moving art in my opinion.
Yeah.
And also I think for us as just, I mean, we are partners in life, partners in the business, partners in everything. And for us, it was a really good, like, aha, yeah, this is meant to be. This is gonna work out the rest of our lives, because you almost like going through the motions of everything. You forget about how important like your actual personal life is, and like when you're in this city trying to survive, like New York is expensive. So we kind of lost touch of our own personal life and reality that because of trying to survive. And so for us, that was also something that I can definitely say Project Runway did help us with
Yeah.
as well.
That's really cool. Um, oh, I had a question that went out of my head from what you were saying, but
No,
I'll keep going with the prepared questions.
We can always go back.
What do you feel like was the best part of the experience?
I think the best part of the experience is just, like Cade was saying, the only responsibility that you have is to create.
Yeah.
And there's not that many places, maybe outside of school, that you have this opportunity where you're just fed, you go to sleep, and then you create. You're fed, you go to sleep, and you create. So the focus was the creation, like creating, and there's not many parts of your life where you experience that. It's a weird thing, and not unless you go through it does it completely maybe even make sense, but
Yeah.
I didn't have to worry about my rent. I didn't have to worry about anything.
Right.
It's just you create.
You did, but
Girl, I broke out in hives. She was like running up and down them streets every day. She was like, "Girl, I can't let myself be on a corner. Like, she's not about that life." So I was like, "How are we going to be able to make all of this happen?" And like I said, he was gone for 2.5 months to develop a 23 look ready to wear collection. Not knowing really how to sew, but also like figuring it out and making it work and it actually looking good. I mean, I ended up selling like a lot of that ready to wear by myself and doing a lot of things that it pushed me in.
Trial by fire.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
It's great.
And so it was like all of these different things to figure out how to survive that I'll give Project Runway some credit for.
Yeah.
You know.
My question was actually contact, because I think they show one time when you guys are talking to each other in the, all the episodes up until now. How are you able to call people whenever you want, or is it completely?
You're in prison.
Yeah.
So
And
literally.
you can't like look things up on your phone either. Like, how do I
Oh,
do
that's
that?
the other thing of the process. When you're designing, you do research. You look at things.
Yeah.
You have 20 minutes to sketch, and you better come up with something.
And
so
you can't go to your phone.
nope.
No.
You have nothing to use as a reference, so it's literally whatever life experiences you've had
Wow.
in the past. That's what you get.
And that's also like with the communication. I can say this because I didn't sign an NDA for this, but so this doesn't leave the room though. Just don't get me in trouble. Um, but he literally for 2.5 months altogether, we might have gotten 15 minutes worth of conversation,
Holy moly.
and that was 3 phone calls.
Wow.
You want to talk about a mental breakdown?
Yeah.
Like straight up, because I mean, I'm from the middle of nowhere in Texas. So for me, I had no people, no family. Like it's literally just us two up here. So for us, that was like we rely on each other a lot.
How long
And
ago did you move here?
we moved here 2 years ago.
2 years
Yeah,
still,
2 years.
Still pretty new, yeah.
Yeah, it's still
Yeah.
pretty new. So for me, that was like a whole nother experience as well, having to handle things. And then the one person that you rely on the most that you see every day, you can't speak to. And that was interesting. They
Yeah.
tell you you can speak more, but then
whole-
they don't
It's
let
a whole
you.
another episode, just seeing what's going on with people's partners.
Yeah. Oh, girl, every time he
during the
called, I
show.
was like bawling the entire time. That's why you only see like one clip of me because I'm
Yeah.
crying the rest of the time.
I can
Mental
only imagine.
breakdown.
Yeah, that's how I feel like after 2 days without my husband, so I get it. And my other question is the judging sessions. I mean, they obviously they edit. There's so much more footage than we ever get to see, but do they say a lot more to you than they show, or do they show a pretty significant amount of what they say?
The judging takes 8 hours.
Wow.
So you're standing for a long time,
Wow.
and it's exhausting, and a lot of people pass out.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
So, like, you get a little snippet of the judging. Just know that you get a little snippet of the judging
Yeah.
when it comes to how it's being edited.
Yeah.
So, just think about those things. And that's also something, and this is like a PSA, I will say right now. Social media is not for you to give an opinion that tears somebody down if you're that type of person. Please don't be that person. And if you don't think you are that person, maybe just like look at what you comment sometimes. Because honestly, social media, people do see things, and it is a very cruel world that we live in. And we need to figure out, and at least everyone in this room needs to figure out how they can help better it and be positive and always find something positive in the light of something, because it is reality television, and that goes with anything. Like after him going on the show, I have a completely different perspective and outlook on everything that you see on reality television.
Yeah.
Because it is made to be entertaining, and
There's
it is.
writers, you know what
Yeah.
I mean?
It is very entertaining. Like he offers you a different. He is a what do we call it? Like a character, I guess.
Yeah.
He's a character on the show.
Yeah.
And that's part of it. That's part of what we signed up for. You can't take it back, and you can't be mad about it.
Right.
But at the same time, just know that these are characters, and that we have to figure out a way to be nice to one another.
It's
as well.
interesting. They edit the majority of the show before they know the winner. I mean, the last
Yeah.
2 episodes, right? They probably
Yeah.
know. Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely interesting.
Imagine going back after an edit like this. That's fun.
Let's see. How do you feel like you keep yourself informed of what the latest trends are that are going on?
Well, that's more me.
Yeah,
then-
Kate handles more of like, I don't know. I don't find popular culture as inspiring to me because I feel like, I don't know. I like learning about things, and so I'm literally always listening to different news, like organizations or different podcasts that are telling you about different things that are going on, and I like to be a filter for that. So I don't have the traditional, like, I guess you would say, view on how to develop things.
He oftentimes, like you were saying earlier, pulls from history to start the design process. And so what I'll do is I'll be like, hey, say for instance, he wants to create a ball gown that looks like it's fully covered up to the neck, and it takes up like this entire stage. I will be like, okay, what if we make this part sheer and add a bandeau or a bralette or something like that to bring it more in today's time towards like pop culture? Because, I mean, to be 100% honest, the big ball gowns are more of like a business card than they are actually something that you sell as much and as often. So for us, that's how we look at it. If we're going to make it, we needed to be on the red carpet, or we needed to be shot on a celebrity. We needed to be something out there that grabs the eye and makes people be like, oh, okay, that's amazing. Like, I want to work with these people because they create these amazing things. And then if I can get a little cocktail that was like cheaper and maybe the same color, the same fabrication or fabric or whatever, then so be it. So that's where I'll be like, okay, who could I see as a celebrity resonating with not only the political message and or like what we're trying to tie it to when it comes to a social issue that we're trying to fix, but also somebody that would look amazing in it and that could be that person that takes that gown to the next level, you know?
And we've started focusing on people that are celebrities but are they're advocates for something for change for good. So we literally, if the person is just somebody famous for no reason, we'll actually won't dress them. Like that's not who we are. We want somebody who's going to be standing up for a minority or a certain group of people and that is making a change in the world because we don't want to support like emptiness in an essence.
Yeah. You can be pretty, but be pretty and have a message. Like let's make a difference with I mean, we're all given these platforms to make a difference. I mean, even though we were trying to make a difference before we even had a platform. And that's how we should all live our lives every day is to figure out how we can make changes and like I think another one of the reasons that we are in the boat that we're in via IE, like how his maybe his characters come across on the show and or how the world is seeing us right now via when it comes to the fashion industry itself, we are like a minority in its own in the fashion industry because it's so terrifying for people to be like, how can a small business make this garments and survive and like sell at these prices and then also on top of that like not create mass product because that's defeating the purpose of what we're doing. That's how we make our millions and billions of dollars. And we're trying to rewrite the story that success is just financial compensation. Success should be about you telling your story and leaving a legacy of change and encouragement and kindness and those sorts of things.
Love that. That's great. I think my final question would just be, if you can answer this, hopefully you can. What are you most surprised did or didn't show up in what you've watched so far?
Well,
Project Y.
each and every episode I tackled a very specific social issue, and sometimes they showed it, sometimes they completely changed what I said, and so it's been very confusing for people to understand. Not even, I mean, they even understand who I am as a person, and so that having my message come across, but I was still willing to do it, even though that might have not been
Might
the
be
way
the
I said.
case.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so my true passion is to make a change in the world, and like it doesn't come from. I'm not using this to try to be more famous. I'm using this because I do want to make a change, and I'm willing to put myself out there to whatever consequences come from it, that I'm still willing to like face them, because people who are the game changers are going to face the most like oppression from the opposite side because of fear. Some people don't want change. Some people are fine being stuck in where they are, but I'm willing to wake up every day and go against everything, pretty much go against the world, because you do have to if you want to make the changes. The most influential people have gotten so much negative reaction to what they're doing until they either leave their legacy or people start seeing the change be something better for all people. They get assassinated. It really is scary how much people will try to stop change. And I'm willing to put whatever it is out there to make these changes because I believe in it.
That's great.
Yeah, and like the show itself, with him being on there, I think the only thing, I mean, we're pretty much roll with the punches on a lot of this because it is TV and you signed up for it. There was only one thing that really was just like, like, really? Let's be. Our whole political messaging has been political messaging since day one, before the show even was in our realm of like that was
Possibility,
yeah,
yeah.
possibility. And I think there was a moment with the backwards tuxedo that people don't understand that needs like better explanation. And fortunately, we were able to go to Bravo and they were able to do this whole write up about it. That's on Bravo.com. But I mean, he was not. I'm sure y'all all saw on Diet Prada, if you're familiar with this, that he was like made a backwards tuxedo. It was a backwards tuxedo dress. Let's
know
be
it was on
clear
Diet
first.
Prada.
Yeah, and it was on Diet Prada, and they
I
were
don't think
comparing.
they looked that similar, by
No,
the way.
no, thank you.
For anyone who didn't watch, he made a gorgeous gown that was a backwards, all ivory tuxedo, backwards tuxedo, and they said it looked very similar to Celine Dion's look from when
The
the
90s.
The
90s,
Yeah.
I'm
which
like,
was very oversized.
Yeah.
and it was
It
a
was a backwards
suit.
tuxedo, but it was a suit and it was
Well,
not a gown.
and he looked like he just literally took a jacket and just put it
Yeah.
backwards on
And it was
her.
large. I mean, it was large.
Yeah.
And this gown fit like a glove.
Yeah, this one fit like a glove, and also the story behind it was very misconstrued. And we talked to them about, hey, this is not right. We actually, so the entire premises of the look itself was that it was about the 1950s and the tax rate for the 1%, and how the 1% paid a higher tax rate than what they're paying in today's time. And it's basically backwards now because minorities and the middle class and lower class are the ones basically holding up our financial system right now because these big businesses and billion-dollar businesses are not paying high enough taxes
No, they're not paying any taxes.
or any, yeah, to begin with.
So socialism is for the rich in our country. They get all of these tax breaks. Sometimes they don't pay any taxes, making billions, but yet everyday people in working class families, middle class families, pay a big percentage of their taxes. And so the tuxedo was actually referencing that we're going backwards on social issues, but also that in the 50s, the top 1% paid 90% tax rate, which gave the rest of Americans the ability not only to afford homes, but have a parent, it doesn't matter if it's a man or woman, stay home with children, and one salary could afford everything that they needed, which is people now are working 3 or 4 jobs. Both parents are working. Who's taking care of your children? Like, we are so obsessed with money that we can't look at why everything's falling apart around us. And it's because of this greed of the richest of the rich. They're pinching everything out of our industry and our country. We don't make anything anymore. And so all of these issues are connected to greed. Every single social issue, every environmental issue comes down to a few people wanting to pinch every penny that they can, and they don't realize that it's making human suffering all around the world.
Yeah. And so basically, they took that 1950s comment and made it sound as though he was ready to go back to the 1950s when we had racism at high, and then when women did not have any rights,
Right.
basically, and then also LGBTQIA, which, let's be honest, how stupid is that? Because you're looking at 2 queer people
Yeah.
on the stage. So, like,
You know, I didn't actually think your comment said that, but that's the way the judge spit it back at you that then
Yeah. And then-
made you wonder, okay, was there more said that you didn't hear?
and then that judge also heard all of what this was being said,
Yeah.
and then took that same comment that was edited and then put it on her Instagram on President's Day. You want to talk about me wanting to come unglued. So, but you have to play the game
Yeah.
to get to where you need to go, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
But like, just be aware that people are going to, if you are offering something different,
They're
people
going
are
to try to bring you down.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, and here's the thing, and this is what I talk about all the time to a lot of different people, especially because where I come from, it's a town of 2,500 people. It was voted or not voted, it was the highest county to vote for the Republican Party during the last presidential.
Percentage-wise?
Percentage-wise,
Wow.
yeah. So it's very high up there, and I tell people this all the time. It's not that people are wanting these things to like attack other people. It's not so much about attacking. It's a lot about a fear. People are not exposed to things. So when they're not exposed to it, it turns into fear. And oftentimes that fear turns into hatred. And so that's what we're in a world today where certain people are afraid of something different, and that different thing is what then makes them be like, well, I don't like that. And then from there, it's like, oh, well, then let's just turn it into hatred and either get rid of it or, put it away somehow, somehow.
People with money are weaponizing fear to make you be scared of things so that they can control us. And
Yeah.
that's really what it comes down to at the end of the day. All of these things that are around the world, they have very simple solutions, but they scare you with things so that you feel small and unempowered, in which today's time we all need to be empowered because everybody's voice is just invaluable as any wealthy person, any celebrity, any of these people that supposedly have more power. We all are very powerful, and that's
Yeah.
what we want to convey as people.
Yeah, and if anything, we have the most power because we're the ones putting them where they're at. So,
You give them the power.
Yeah.
Done.
y'all didn't know y'all were coming to get preached to either, did y'all? Y'all thought it was just fashion. But yeah, that's the honest.
I guess now I have one more question. I know I said it was my
Yeah.
last one, but if you do win, then what is your intention with the money? If you're not planning to scale very, very large, what do you
So we honestly just want to inspire people that they can make a change. Now, also going through this process, like our industry is so focused on money that I want to empower small designers. Like that's what my goal is, and that they can be sustainable, ethically responsible. We want to share all of the information and be as transparent as possible. We answer questions on Instagram all the time of where we buy our fabrics, how we create our stuff, because sharing information is how we're all going to be taking the power away from the people who try to control our narrative. And I want to empower everybody in the room that they can make it in this industry and just do what you love. It doesn't even matter what it is. If you love it, that's what's going to make you happier in life, and that's what's going to be make you a positive person to make changes in this world.
Yeah, and like back to your question as well, is that honestly the whole idea of the company is to be able to not only employ people that we've worked alongside for years, but also or who have helped us out in times of need. Because like we do have, like you were saying earlier, part of our ready to wear is made in Texas as well. We have seamstresses there who we try to employ as often as we can because these women are not, they're being overworked, and on top of that, they're not being paid a fair wage. They're constantly, and then half the time they take half the stuff they're having to either fix or make or alter. They're taking it home with them when they should be able to have that time to spend with their family and their children and everything else. But they're having to take all of that home because they're paid a salary that's not even high enough salary for them. And it's just, so for us, it's about employing the people that have been with us for the longest. And also, we're wanting to, and it's been in the works for quite some time, it's just a matter of getting the finances behind it. But we actually work with a company out of India who rescues women out of sex trafficking and then teaches them different types of, what's the word?
Well, just skills on how to create products.
Yeah, and so what we would like to do is then use our form of it, which is like maybe it's creating a textile, or maybe it's just sewing the ready-to-wear itself. And if when I say creating the textile, creating something out of like an organic material that's biodegradable as well, such as like banana silk or something like that. And what we want to do is then teach them a trade with the sewing side of things and the fashion side of things that we would then be paying them a fair wage. On top of that, they're able to employ multiple other people, and then we all benefit from it.
Well, and support their families.
Yeah.
A lot of places around the world, they don't have access to opportunity, and so unfortunately in places like that, people get taken advantage of and go into an industry where they don't even have a choice in the matter.
Yeah.
And we want to help people have an option that they can support their families and have a great life doing something that hopefully that they love to do.
Yeah, and it's not even just India. Like, that's here in the United States. People don't realize sex trafficking actually happens here in the United States just as much as it does any other country. When we did a whole denim day collection that was made from hand-painted denim from child slaves out of Ghana which people don't realize that still happens too. But then that hand painted denim was then made into these beautiful garments and put on these celebrities who were either somehow affected by sex trafficking and
Human trafficking.
or human trafficking and or like sexual assault. Because Denim Day is a day where a woman was basically made to blame because she was wearing tight denim jeans, that her rapist, she basically was wanting to be raped because her jeans were so tight that she had to help him get them off for her to be able to get raped. So it must have, it went to court in Italy. You know more
It was
about
a
it than-
Supreme Court case in Italy in 1998 where this woman was assaulted and her assailant blamed her because of her jeans. And it had to go all the way to the Supreme Court to get overturned. And so on that day, I think it's April 24th, we do it every single year. It's just about empowering people and treating people with kindness and respect so that we don't have issues like this. And a lot of it is on educating people on how to have productive relationships.
Yeah.
Because we do have a lot of toxicity in our cultures about not respecting each other. And so this conversation on that day is very important because people don't realize like very simple things like not taking advantage of people in those terms. Like sometimes that doesn't make sense to everyone. And
Yeah.
so having these conversations at a young age prevents that taking hold in certain cultures.
Yeah. And in all cultures, there's different ways of people taking advantage. Like I was saying, here in the United States, people don't realize, but it does take place. That human trafficking does take place, and it could just be because the boyfriend of a girl is saying, "Oh, if you'll do this for me, it helps us pay the rent," that sort of thing. So there's all different forms of it, and so we're trying to bring awareness to all of these problems. Yes, we create beautiful garments, and we love what we do with our art and creating these pieces, but at the same time, we're trying to spread awareness to all these different issues that still exist today that shouldn't even be existing. Like, everybody should be happy. Everybody should enjoy this life we get, and as cliche as it sounds, you only live once.
Yeah.
So unless you come back as a house cat, which is my next goal. So...
All right. Well, I want to make sure we leave some time. I don't know if you guys have a hard stop, but
No,
I'm going to turn it over to the students to ask some of your questions. I think we're going to have to, here, I'll walk it out to you guys. And I also have a sign-in. I'll start in the front.
It's so quiet.
Hello? Okay. Hey guys, as a sustainable brand, can you explain your process through upcycling and how does that go about overseas, here in the US?
So we get all of our textiles from jobbers. They actually purchase all of the leftovers from our fashion industry. There's so much waste and like overstock when people are creating production, just because sometimes the minimum is 10,000 units or 5,000 units. And so there's literally hundreds of yards every single season that are just out there. And sometimes people just toss them out. Some jobbers actually purchase them if they're of good quality. And so we only use things that are already existing in the world so that we don't. Water is actually something that our industry uses a ton of, and creating with only the upcycled materials, it creates having a lot less waste out of landfills because you're using what's already out there. Something that I actually did on Project Runway that I really love doing was creating garments from Goodwill, things that were at Goodwill, which like you can actually take apart things and remake them. And we only buy used clothing because like we don't want to be a burden on the environment. And so there's also Gooderman makes recycled thread. So that's another way to be sustainable. We don't use any animal products when creating anything that we create because we don't want to harm anything on the planet. And we do buy used leather goods because we don't want them ending up in the landfills. And that way the animal didn't have to die for any reason. but we just try to be as mindful of Mother Earth as we can throughout our process.
Yeah, all the fabrics that you see us using come from houses such as like Prada, Dior, Givenchy, Chanel. We use a lot of the blue clays sometimes from Chanel. But if you guys are interested and or looking for sustainable places to purchase fabric, A&A Textiles out of New Jersey is a great place for you to go and purchase. And if you don't have a tax ID, take cash with you, and you can also purchase there a lot of the time.
Thank you.
So you said on Project Runway you only had like 20 minutes to do your designs. So I'm just kind of curious what your like mental design process was so quickly, and how you followed through with the design. If you ever had any like doubts later, at, 20 minutes to design, and then you have like a day or two to follow through on it, and like any tips you can give to us aspiring designers of how to design under that much pressure.
I will say, to your credit, they do make you seem very confident in your gut, which is good.
Well, my process is a little bit different. I always tried to pick a social issue in the 20 minutes that I wanted to focus on, and then come up with the design that best told that story. So I was always trying to tell a story, and that's what Cade was trying to reference, where if you're telling something that's authentically you in that process, and that's a hard thing to develop as a designer. It takes years of trying to express yourself from within into a physical garment. And so just practicing on how to make something authentically you is really going to make you the most efficient designer, because it's an extension of yourself at the end of the day.
And I will also like say, so I don't know if all teachers teach this way here, but we have worked with teachers in the past who oftentimes start with sketches to then fabric. But as a company using upcycled materials, we actually start with fabric to then go into sketches a lot of the time. Which honestly, I feel like that's better for anybody, no matter if you are creating your own fabric or not. I just feel like it's easier for you to then have a clear path to get to where you're going. And with Project Runway, the one thing I will say that's frustrating for me as a viewer and a person connected to this whole thing is that oftentimes, like they would say, make it seem as though his inspirations were afterthoughts. It was like, oh, he's making this design, and then he just wants to tie on a political issue just because. And it's like, that's for viewings, and that's not the case. Everything that we do always has that messaging behind it. And yes, like there are some times that he was baffled on the show and was like, how am I gonna, like, what can I find in myself that makes this true to what I'm doing? But oftentimes that's always who we are as a company.
And I was doing that before the show.
Yeah, but as a designer for yourself, I would say just kind of have an idea of the silhouettes that you create as a person, as a designer before going on to that, something like that, and then just knowing that there's going to be a bunch of things that can be thrown at you, and you just got to be able to go with the flow. And that's also something like years and years and years of practice, is being able to just deal with it and be fluid as it goes on.
And you have to sew at 100 miles per hour,
I bet.
like super fast, and pattern and cut and everything else that go with it.
Anybody else?
When you were told you were going to go on the show to when you actually left for the show, how much time did you have?
A week.
A week.
Oh, wow.
And on top of that, we had just finished Denim Day. Then we had just done a week and a half worth of creating the Billy Porter Tony's gown moment. And then he left for 3 days, and we saw each other like for 2 days, and then he left. Yeah.
Wow.
So it was like we were already like going
It's been a
9-0.
year.
Yeah, it's been a long year in a good way. Like definitely
Yeah.
appreciating to everything that we've
Yeah.
received, but we haven't had a vacation, and
I don't know.
yeah, I don't even know how to spell vacation anymore. Anybody else?
Right here. First, I do want to say thank you so much for like having passion in this world. It's so
Yeah.
nice to, I don't know, hear people speak and have that same ideology, because it's very rare, I feel like. But my first question, or my only question, is around inclusivity to fitting, because you talk about that a lot. for someone who is very interested in that and who does not have the body type that, like, we design for school, how do you think one school should maybe implement that more? And also for someone who is in school right now, ready to graduate, where do I look to find information on footing? Because it's never really taught in like a school setting.
One of my biggest things that I could tell you is practice on your family members, because they family members usually have all different range of proportion and everything. Practice before, because once somebody's paying you money, honey, that's it. Like, you don't got no more chances. So practice on your friends, like figure stuff out, play on people's play. You're playing in an essence and figuring out the process, and all different proportions. The way that you approach design is completely different, and that's a skill that does take time to learn. So just make sure that you get it all done. Make yourself stuff, and like really just go through the process a million times. Repetitiveness is going to be a key to success, and that's with anything that you do in the world.
As a designer, are you saying that you want to like create for like size 12, 14, 26 and up, or like what are you referencing?
I think me personally, when I go to the store, it's hard to find clothes that's, let's say, huge in the bust, small waist, and then huge in the back.
Right,
So
right.
it's having those dynamic change, like huge changes in like.
That's a beautiful
proportion.
body, must I say. But we have clients that are just like that. And it's literally just understanding where their waistline is and like figuring out what's going to flatter them best. And oftentimes, if you need reference, ask them to bring their favorite item of clothing and ask them to bring that over. And then maybe you start with like where that waist is on that piece of clothing to then create the look that you're wanting, if they want a waistline, I guess I should say. But yeah, I feel like, and also like he was saying, like working on fittings with your family and stuff. Don't edit out the idea. Not everybody has to have a waistline. There are some people who are like as square can be, and there are some people who are as round can be, and then there's the people that who do have like different waistlines. You have to figure out as a designer and challenge yourself to work with all body types, because at the end of the day, these are the people that are oftentimes the ones purchasing the garments from you. We have one client who has the body that you're talking about, like with the J-Lo body, is what I refer to it as, because it's beautiful. But very rarely do we have those types of clients. A lot of the times it's A-line women who are like flat-chested here and like size 2 up here, but then they're like a size 6 or 8 on the bottom. You have to figure out all of these different ways to fit their bodies, and it takes a lot of repetition, and it also just takes a willingness to want to work with those types of bodies. Because a lot of the times when kids leave their schools, or when they're designing when we see their projects and stuff at all the schools, they're designing for somebody who's a size 2, and they're like, yeah, all these holes and these like very interesting designs. I want to sell this to somebody who's 26 years old, but my budget, or each piece is going to cost $1,200, or it's going to cost $5,000, and it's like a 26-year-old rarely has that kind of money. Like, unless they come from some good money, in which, hey, I'm all about that client. If y'all got friends, hook us up. But like, let's be honest, a lot of the older generation and the people who are in their like 30s and up are the ones who have the money that can actually afford those types of garments on a regular basis. So
And
think about
your
these
body's
things.
always changing, and so your body when you're 20 is different than your body when you're 40, and you dress that body differently, and you're in a different place in your life. And so that's why I'm saying practice on your family members, because they're in all different categories, and young people are paying off their student loans. They're starting their careers. So if you want a very young driven brand, your product has to be $20 to maybe $150 at the top. And so be realistic on who you're trying to dress. The caliber of client that we deal with is usually like 40 and up, and they do have a hard time finding things at stores. But what it does is it opens up the world to smaller designers that they can get an experience with, so that they can fit any type of body that comes into our studio.
And to kind of in that whole thing too is like when we design a collection, we think of the one woman that's always purchasing from us. And she does have that, fortunately, she does have that J-Lo body, but oftentimes she's very like, she embraces her body, but at the same time, she's an elegant, classy woman who's in her 50s. And so we oftentimes, like, we'll throw like 4 or 5 couture pieces that we're creating into that collection that we're like, this would look amazing on her because at the end of the day, she might be purchasing it as well.
Whoever gives you money is dictating your designs.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just a little bit back into the left.
Nowadays, companies use environmental activism as a marketing tool. According to you,
Yes, they do.
Greenwashing.
Yeah.
yeah. So, what do you think is a corporate's responsibility?
They need to go out of business.
Basically.
Yeah, the future of our planet is not these big businesses.
Yeah. They need to narrow it down. Even like, for instance, if y'all have, I don't know if y'all watch a lot of the fashion documentaries that come out, but even like Vivienne Westwood, she doesn't like where she's at right now with her company. She literally hates that they're opening up so many companies. She's lost control of it, and she doesn't have her name and what, like, she doesn't have her design aesthetic attached to her name anymore. She's lost it. So what's the point of being this passionate designer who loves to create garments to then watch your entire business blow up and then you lose full control of it and you can't put a design out there that you actually like?
I mean, you can look at Michael Kors, and that's a great example. He's actually a really talented designer, and I love his collections, but I don't know anybody that's going to pay thousands of dollars for Michael Kors when you have that crappy MK thing everywhere. Every like mom in the United States has one of those ugly ass bags, and they're super polluting.
Not every mom.
Yeah.
Well, that's what people think is fashion, but also to create all of the giant volumes, it's killing our planet.
And oftentimes, a lot of these people will like this whole greenwashing thing. They're outsourcing all of this. So they'll to have somebody basically they have a middleman so that they can cut ties off with this middleman, so that if they do get in trouble, it doesn't fall back on their company. And then let's be honest, like the press and the world and the media and everything else does not hold these people accountable for these situations. Yes, it's written about one day, but then a week later, everybody's still, I mean, Gucci, let's be honest. How many times have we ran into problems with Gucci? And then we have this whole thing with the face masks and all this other stuff. And then, not to mention, people still support it. But on top of that, people of that culture, African American culture, wear Gucci and write about Gucci in songs and talk about Gucci in songs. That frustrates the living hell out of me, like 100%. If somebody doesn't take the time to understand where you come from and your culture, and doesn't take the time to figure out how to be respectful and embrace like the culture that should be the part of your culture that should be embraced, why are we supporting these companies? Why are we supporting these brands, giving them our money?
The biggest one that claims to be a sustainable or trying to be sustainable is Stella McCartney. The bags that she makes are super poisonous. She got in trouble for paying her employees $2 an hour to make her thousands of dollars garments. And so our industry is crooked as hell. And so the bigger the company is, the more shady shit they're doing. And y'all need to quit buying their stuff. Don't support them. Buy your friends' designs. That's who y'all should be supporting.
And on top of that, educating your family members. Your family members are also the ones that have the connections to the people who are purchasing these. Like when we talk about educating the consumer, it's not just, I mean, we all in this room can sit here and agree, but the rest of the world doesn't even begin to understand or know why something costs what it does. And the reason being is because we've taken the education part and we've taken away like
the
transparency, and people don't understand it takes time to create now. We want things just like that, super fast, super quick. We expect
Quit buying Zara and H&M because it's killing what y'all want to do for the future.
Exactly.
And they knock off everything.
Girl, go to Buffalo Exchange. If you
Yeah.
want something cheap, go to Buffalo Exchange. Go to the Real
And they have good stuff.
Go to Goodwill. Like, there's plenty of places, and then you can even take those things and create your own designs with them. Make it your own. But stop supporting these companies that aren't doing anything good for the planet and that aren't doing anything good for you as a designer.
Or your communities.
Yeah. Sorry, got passionate.
Was eco-consciousness a tenet of the brand when you started in 2005?
No, because when I was going to school, that wasn't even part of the narrative. So I didn't know about it. And so not until I was in our industry and saw how bad it was, was I like woken up to be like, why are we like doing all of these harmful things to our planet, and people dumping chemicals, people just throwing stuff away, people collapsing, like us donating to like third world countries actually collapses their economic system when maybe designers in their country are trying to support themselves when they can go somewhere and just pick up stuff for free. So we're connected. All of us on this planet are connected, and the person sitting next to you's issue is going to be your issue one day if we don't all deal with it. And so we just need to be aware that the solutions are actually really simple. You have to be aware of them.
Yeah, and with the ego consciousness too. I mean, he says no in the sense of like it wasn't something that he was aware of, but the company itself has been going to A&A Textiles since 2005, which is a fully upcycled company that buys all of the fabric from the jobbers to then sell to us. So in a sense, it has been eco-conscious without even thinking about being eco-conscious, because that wasn't even the terminology. People weren't talking about it or any of that. I think
It's actually a negative thing when I
Yeah.
was going to school.
Absolutely.
Like they thought it was like cheap or something.
Yeah.
Like, it was a negative thing. So
It's just like if you went to a thrift store. Back in the day, I mean, up until like, and what, yeah, 2 or 3 years ago, people looked at going to the thrift store as a bad thing, you know?
Or renting, or
Yeah.
all these things that have become,
Exactly.
totally.
I have another question.
Sure.
What does the future of Celestino Couture look like?
3 stores, one here, one in Paris, and then one back home in Austin or in Texas somewhere, just to support where we come from as well. And those 3 stores carry a version of Pret-a-Porter, which is going to be things such as how our business runs with the Pret-a-Porter as well, and I can talk a little bit about it, is that basically we create bodies of garments and shoot it that way, and that's how the client is like, this would look good on my body, and or we steer the client to this would look good on that body, to which then you then pick your fabric or your textile. And in the stores we'll have things like that you can try on and purchase that are basically one-offs or one-of-a-kind pieces, but it's not just jam-packed with clothes.
we're
And
not going to do stock.
no,
We're
it
going
won't
to
be
do
stock.
very limited runs.
Yeah.
And we do want to fix a lot of these problems on our planet by having these conversations. So we love fashion, we love to create, but at the end of the day, we want to make our planet a better place for all humans, not just a few.
Yeah, and it also is going to come down to not just having the 3 stores that have this whole social story behind it, but also employing different people of race, different types of people of age as well. That's something else that exists in our industry all over is ageism. So employing women who are in their 50s and 60s and later years, as well as the young people who are coming up into the industry. And also it's going to be offering education, and it's also going to be some of those things, one of those things where eventually we wish to have like our own trade schools or something of that nature, as well as the Celestino brand having its own. Like, I plan to be taking over. Like, I want a production company creating movies that actually tell stories of all of the narratives and the social issues that we're pushing for. And in those movies, we're going to be using these incredible fashions to grab the eye of the person that's going to watch it. And then on top of that, it's going to be putting in people who are gender nonconforming, trans, who are African American, Indian, Vietnamese, whatever they may be, and telling all of these stories through movies, as well as like, I mean, I want to take over, y'all. I'm ready. I'm 26, so I have plenty of time and energy to put towards this.
Hi, in the future, do you ever seek to collaborate with other sustainable brands, but of course, keeping in mind what the style and the purpose of Celestino is?
What do you mean by like sustainable brands? Because are how many?
Not the ones that greenwash, obviously, but
Okay.
but you're like, you use upcycled materials and embellishments. So keeping that in mind, like brands that do that.
We might be open to it, but
But-
we want to more create transparency and tell people how we did it so that they don't have to be running around trying to figure it out and polluting while figuring it out. We want to give you all the answers, all the secrets. We want to share all the information because at the end of the day, information is really power. And our industry has a way of like keeping doors closed because people get jealous or they have to make $1 billion or they're going to go out of business. And so they keep all of these walls between you and them. And we just want to open the gates up and be like, hey, this is how we did it. You go do your version. And we wish you luck. We'll be here to support you in any capacity. And if you have a question, ask us. We'll give you the answer.
Collaboration is a really hard word for us because to collaborate means for us it'd be, I mean, the best way I can see it is a lot of designers collaborate with anything and everything. So for instance, you'll see a design house collaborate with a candy bar. You'll see a design house collaborate with
or Zara.
command strips or H&M or Zara or like all of these different types of things you can collaborate with. Is finding something that's sustainable and that's not creating plastic, that's not taking advantage of people. And when you're looking at it at a scale to, I mean, because at the end of the day, a collaboration also entails trying to make money. And let's be honest, there's not a lot of
We're not
brands
gonna
that
sell
you
out.
know. Yeah, there's
We're
not a
not
lot
gonna
of
sell
brands
out.
that you know of that are actually not taking advantage of someone and not, you know what I'm saying? Like anything you see on national television, with the exception of like instances of him being on the show, when it comes to your commercials, anything like that, it's all about making money. That's all it is.
And those are the companies that are actually causing the most problems. 'Cause
Exactly.
they have enough money to spend millions of dollars pushing either drugs or some kind of plastic thing.
Water bottles.
Water
It can
bottles,
be any.
yeah.
It can be the simplest thing as the chips, like chip bags, even. But you have to think about it in that sense. Like, I would love to collaborate with somebody who's sustainable, who's like making like X amount of water bottles that are made out of glass that are then recyclable, and everything about that thing is fully recyclable. But it's so difficult to find something like that to collaborate with that also has a platform. Because you have to think about it in that sense too. Not a lot of companies that are like doing what we're doing have the big, large scale
Budgets.
platforms and the
Yeah.
budgets to do these things.
If you're doing things the right way, you probably don't have billions of dollars. Usually it's the shady ass companies that push like false narratives that do have that. I'm never going to do a collection for Zara because Zara is killing our planet. And so all those designers that do are compromising their ethics in the process. Because how can you sell that stuff so cheaply? Somebody's being taken advantage of.
And let's be honest, that's what's providing money to pay off the millions and billions of dollars of debt those design houses are in, because that's the easy product to sell. But that's why I'm saying, and what I was talking about to answer the earlier question, is that I want to create the Celestino brand in the sense of like takeover, where it's in every industry, where it's taking over everything to then transform the narrative. Because let's be honest, it's going to take something like that to get in people's heads and to change the whole perspective. Once you then have all of the components together, and entertainment industry is the biggest industry and the most influential industry. So you have to figure out how to take over everything to then make the transformation and the change you want to. And that's what I plan to do.
And people with money see us as a very dangerous, we're dangerous to them because we're calling them out for who we can see them. Yeah. And so we're spreading the word and spreading the awareness of how to be able to see who's doing the most trouble in the world. And just because you see their product all the time doesn't mean it's a good product.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hello.
I watched all episode of Project Runway, and I have questions. Is what was the most difficult mission in the competition, and why?
What was the most difficult what?
Mission
Challenge.
or theme in the
I think for me, the most difficult challenge,
The one day.
well, the one day challenges, but the heritage challenge for me was probably the hardest one just because I am Mexican and I come from a family of immigrants, and I was feeling, I mean, think about children dying if they walked into your school and were checked in at that door. Do you think people would make a big deal if 6 kids died coming to check into the front of FIT? That's 6 children died just in processing in the border. So that was such an emotional, not only inspiration, but it's part of my culture. Those are my people. And so that was super hard, not only to create something, but feeling the energy of those children that died just in processing. Like they had gone past the journey to get to America is so difficult that when you make it here and you pass away just by sitting in cages, that to me does not
Alone,
like
without
make
your
any
parents.
sense.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like, and also perspective wise, that was a one day challenge too. So looking at that dress, yes,
I was depressed the whole time making it.
And I told him, and I was like, girl, that is not my favorite dress. Like, you call me up and I'll fix it for you. But the whole point of that dress too is
But you
like,
didn't have time to think.
yeah,
and-
exactly. Well,
Yeah.
and if you think about it, that dress had a lot of different components to it.
Right.
And not only was it all hand embroidered, it was like I mean, you created the bodice, the skirt, and then the inlay, and then the ribbon as well. And then you also had to fit it to a curved model, which is a little bit more tedious to do. And on top of that, like having the right measurements, like any agency, FYI, this is outside of just Project Runway. When you're getting models and stuff, never trust the comp cards because 90% of the time the comp cards are wrong. Everybody's body changes and shifts and moves and goes into different places. So to even then fit it to a curved model on top of that, that's going to be an exhausting long day. And then what he's crying about isn't exactly what was actually said, and that's all we'll say about that. Sorry.
We probably have time for just one more. Gotta sit closer if you want your question.
So I know your company's the idea is to be environmentally conscious and labor conscious. What would be your advice to somebody who's just starting out by themselves and don't know where to go in that route, cost wise?
Ask questions like this because it's important.
And honestly, that's like such a big, you honestly have to first figure out what you're going to be happy doing. So the great thing about fashion is there's so many places that you can fit in. You could be a knitwear designer, but that can even go more specific. You can be an urban knitwear designer, you can be a couture knit designer, you can be all of these different things. And so that is the beautiful thing about our industry is there's not like, you need to carve your own path.
And find out your market.
Yeah.
That's going to be the first way to get into it and understand it because if you don't have a market, what's the point of being sustainable when you're not even selling what you're making? You know what I'm saying? So then you have to, once you get your market down and you know your design aesthetic and where you're wanting to go, then you go into sourcing your fabric because let's be honest, the fabric is the number one thing that's creating the garment. And then you then take into consideration the beading and the thread and all of those different things. And it's a step-by-step process. And we are saying all these things and doing all these things now because we've gotten through all of those steps. We, like he was saying, he was using upcycled fabric, but we weren't using upcycled thread. We weren't using upcycled beading. We weren't, I mean, we've always used socially conscious wise embroidery companies that paid their workers actual fair wages and work them at a regular time that they should be working. So we've always made sure of that, but there's also companies that don't do that and that force labor onto all these people for hours on end until they faint and pass out. So it's all of these different steps. And the one thing I will say, even if you're changing one thing to your brand, and then you just add on to it each season. That's doing a world of like changes for this world and humanity right now.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
I'm sure that they could go on and on with questions, but I
Well,
don't know if you have a minute or two.
Yeah, we
to-
can wait
yeah.
down here, and if you have any questions, we are more than happy to answer questions, because this is a part of our passion as well, is sharing information and being transparent and empowering people.
We enjoy this a lot.
Thank you so much for being here. It's been great.
Yeah. Thank you guys.